Some secrets are worth keeping. Others will destroy you from the inside out. New York City, Manhattan, the city that never sleeps, where glass towers scrape the clouds and ambition pulses through every corner like a heartbeat you can feel in your chest. This is where dreams are manufactured, packaged, and sold to the highest bidder. This is where over 3,000 fashion companies fight for survival in an industry that chews up the weak and spits them out before breakfast. And this is where Ava Lewis learned that sometimes the person you love most can become the cage that traps you. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Because every tragedy starts with a dream. Every nightmare begins in broad daylight. Picture this. Runway lights blazing like 1,000 suns. Music pounding through speakers that could wake the dead. Models gliding down the catwalk in designs that cost more than most people make in a year. New York Fashion Week. The Super Bowl of style. The place where careers are made or shattered in the time it takes to walk 30 feet. And there, in the chaos and the glamour and the madness, two worlds collided. Julian Sterling, CEO of Sterling Atelier, Manhattan's hottest luxury brand. Midtown penthouse. Central Park views. The kind of money that makes other rich people feel poor. He stood there in his perfectly tailored suit, watching the show with the bored expression of someone who'd seen it all 1,000 times before. Born into privilege. Raised on it. Breathing it like oxygen. And then there was Ava Lewis, who grew up in the Lower East Side where the rent was late and the lights sometimes got shut off, where her mother worked double shifts in retail just to keep food on the table, where fashion wasn't about runway shows and champagne. It was about stealing moments with worn copies of Vogue, running her fingers over pages she'd memorized, dreaming of a world that seemed impossibly far away. She devoured those magazines like other kids devoured candy. Elle, Harper's Bazaar. Each page a portal to somewhere better, somewhere beautiful. Fashion Institute of Technology. That's where Ava clawed her way after high school. Student loans stacking up like bricks in a wall. She'd spend years paying down. But she didn't care, because for the first time in her life, she was exactly where she belonged. For years of late nights and early mornings. For years of sewing until her fingers bled and sketching until her hand cramped. For years of being told she wasn't good enough, wasn't connected enough, didn't have the right last name. She proved them all wrong. Interned to junior designer. Bottom of the ladder to somewhere that mattered. A boutique label that couldn't pay much but gave her a chance. And Ava took that chance and ran with it like her life depended on it. Because it did. Then came the charity gala. One of those Manhattan events where ticket prices could feed a family for months, and everyone pretends they care about the cause while really just networking and being seen. Ava wasn't supposed to be there. She'd tag along with her boss, wearing a dress she designed herself because buying one wasn't an option. Black silk with subtle beading at the shoulders. Simple, elegant, different. Julian noticed. He crossed the room like a man who'd never been told no in his entire life. Champagne flute in hand, that confident smile that probably got him anything he wanted. And when he asked her to dance, something chemical happened. Something dangerous. The kind of connection that feels like fate, but might just be a really convincing lie. They talked about design until the sun came up. About fabric and form and the way fashion can make someone feel powerful or vulnerable or completely transformed. Julian saw her talent. More than that. He saw something in her that made him feel less alone in his glass tower. And Ava, God help her, saw past the privilege. Saw a man who understood her passion, who spoke her language, who made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she'd found her person. The romance was a whirlwind. Paris fittings where they'd stay up until dawn tweaking hemlines and laughing about nothing. Late-night design sessions in his penthouse. Sketches scattered across marble countertops, worth more than Ava's childhood home. Globe-spanning fashion events where they moved through crowds like celebrities, like royalty, like the couple everyone wanted to be. Manhattan fell in love with them. The self-made designer and the fashion empire heir. The rags-to-riches story wrapped in couture and tied with a bow. Photographers couldn't get enough. Instagram ate it up. They became the IT couple of the fashion world. And for a while, Ava let herself believe this was real. But here's what the magazines didn't show you. Here's what happened behind the closed doors of that Midtown penthouse. Julian Sterling was a perfectionist. No, that's too kind. Julian Sterling was obsessed with control, with image, with maintaining the flawless surface that kept his company on top and his reputation untouchable. He loved Ava, sure, but he loved what she represented more. The beautiful, talented woman on his arm who made him look good, who fit the narrative he'd constructed for his life. Sterling Atelier soared under Julian's leadership, stock prices climbing, fashion critics praising, and everyone whispered the same secret, that Ava was a real genius behind Sterling's recent creative shift toward couture. Her eye for detail, her instinct for what women actually wanted to wear. She'd helped Julian with presentations, offered suggestions he'd take credit for, pour her soul into designs that bore his company's name. She told herself it was partnership, that they were building something together. She was lying to herself, and somewhere deep down, she knew it, because when Ava quietly mentioned her dream, her real dream, the one that kept her up at night, Julian's mask slipped just enough to show what was underneath. Sustainable evening gowns. Her own line. Something that mattered beyond just looking beautiful. Fashion with purpose. With conscience. The kind of thing the market was moving toward. The kind of thing that could actually change the industry. Julian smiled. That indulgent smile. That "you're adorable but naive" smile that made Ava's stomach twist. The market isn't ready for that, he said, like it was obvious. Like her dream was a child's fantasy, he needed to gently correct. Focus on us. On our image. That's what matters right now. Translation: you matter as long as you stay in your place. As long as you make me look good. Ava swallowed her frustration. Played the hostess at events. Smiled for the cameras. Posted the perfect Instagram photos, showing their perfect Instagram life. But inside, something started to crack. Every dismissed proposal. Every time Julian left early from a conference because his agenda mattered more. Every moment she felt herself becoming smaller, quieter, less. She was receding into the background of her own life. Still, she loved him. That's the thing people don't understand about these situations. Love doesn't just disappear because someone treats you badly. Julian was charming when he wanted to be. Protective. He gave her gifts from Parisian ateliers that cost more than her mother made in months. Michelin star restaurants where the wine list read like a mortgage payment. He took pride in her, or at least in how well she played her part. And Ava had friends who reminded her she wasn't crazy. Fellow designers. Other women navigating the impossible balance between ambition and expectation. Women who were choosing their passions, raising their families, redefining what success could look like on their own terms. These conversations gave Ava hope. Made her think that maybe someday she could have both love and independence, career and authenticity. Then came that crisp autumn evening. New York Fashion Week had just wrapped. Sterling Atelier's show had been a triumph. Ava's contributions had been significant, though you wouldn't know it from the press coverage that focused solely on Julian's vision. They went to their favorite restaurant, the one with the glittering top floor that overlooked the city like a kingdom waiting to be claimed. Julian got down on one knee. The diamond caught the light and threw it back in 1,000 directions. Cameras flashed from other diners who recognized him. The restaurant went quiet with that collective held breath of witnessing something supposedly magical. And Ava, her heart pounding, tears streaming down her face, said yes. She meant it. She believed in that moment that their future was perfect. That Julian was her person. That love would be enough to bridge the gap between who she was and who he needed her to be. She was so incredibly, devastatingly wrong. 2 years passed. 2 years of being engaged. 2 years of planning the wedding that would cement their place as Manhattan fashion royalty. 2 years of Ava pushing her own dreams further and further into the future because there was always something more important to Julian. Always another event. Another collection. Another reason why now wasn't the right time for her to step into her own spotlight. And then everything changed with 2 pink lines on a plastic stick. Pregnant. Ava stared at Tess in the bathroom of their penthouse, hands shaking, heart racing with a joy so pure it felt like light filling her chest. A baby. Their baby. The natural next chapter in their love story. She imagined telling Julian. Imagine his face lighting up. Imagine them planning a nursery in that massive penthouse with the Central Park views. She walked out of that bathroom believing she was about to share the best news of their lives. Julian froze when she told him. Just completely froze, like someone had hit pause on the movie of his life. His face went pale. His jaw clenched. And when he finally spoke, his voice carried something Ava had never heard before. Fear. This is not the right time, he said. Not congratulations. Not, we'll figure out. Just a flat statement of rejection. Ava laughed nervously, thinking he was in shock, thinking he just needed a moment to process. When is the right time? We're engaged, I need you with me, Julian interrupted, and now his voice was harder, sharper. The spring collection is crucial. The upcoming shows. I need you functioning at full capacity, not chasing Mother of the Year awards on the side. The words hit like a slap. On the side, like motherhood was a hobby, like their child was an inconvenience to his schedule. Julian, this is our baby. You need to end this. Silence. The kind of silence that feels like falling, like the floor dropping out from under you and discovering there's nothing but darkness below. Ava stared at the man she loved, searching his face for some sign he didn't mean it. Some indication this was panic talking, shock, anything but the cold calculation she saw in his eyes. You want me to... She couldn't even finish the sentence. I'm not ready for this. His voice broke slightly, and maybe that crack showed he wasn't entirely heartless. Maybe it proved there was still some humanity buried under all that ambition and image obsession. But it didn't matter, because the next words out his mouth sealed everything. This would derail the company. Risk bad press. You understand that, don't you? This isn't about not wanting children eventually. It's about timing. Timing. As if love operated on a business calendar. As if life waited for the perfect quarterly report. Ava felt something inside her shatter and reform simultaneously. The image of Julian, the man she'd built up in her mind, the partner she believed in, that image cracked like a mirror hit with a hammer. And in the broken pieces, she saw the truth she'd been avoiding for years. Julian Sterling didn't love her. He loved what she provided. The image, the talent he could claim, the beautiful accessory who made him look like more than just another rich CEO. She left that conversation and spent the next weeks in a fog of soul-searching that nearly broke her. Long walks in Manhattan at 2 a.m. when she couldn't sleep, sitting in coffee shops watching other mothers with their children, wondering if she had the strength to do this, questioning everything she thought she knew about her life, her choices, her future, to keep Julian, to keep the security, the lifestyle, the love she'd invested years in building. Should she sacrifice the most natural, joyful thing that ever happened to her? The pressure crushed down on her from all sides. Logic said one thing. Her heart screamed another. And then one moonlit night, Ava found herself walking into a clinic, appointment scheduled, decision supposedly made. The doctor performed the examination, checked the dates, looked up with a gentle expression that somehow made everything worse. I'm sorry, the doctor said softly. You're past the legal limit for termination. It's too late. Ava felt panic surge through her veins. And underneath that panic, something else, something that felt dangerously close to relief. Fate, it seemed, had made the choice for her. But that didn't solve the problem of Julian. Didn't solve the problem of hiding a pregnancy from a man who noticed everything, who controlled everything, who expected her at his side for every event and appearance and perfect Instagram moment. So Ava did something she'd never done before in her entire life. She became a liar, a schemer, a woman with a secret that would either save her or destroy everything. And as she walked out of that clinic into New York night, one hand detectively over her stomach that wasn't showing yet, Ava Lewis made a decision that would change the course of her entire existence. She would have this baby. She would protect this life growing inside her. And Julian Sterling would never know. At least that was a plan. But here's a question worth considering. Can you really build a future on a foundation of secrets? Can love survive when truth becomes the enemy? And when the choice is between the person who promised you forever and the child who represents everything authentic and real in your life, when keeping both means destroying yourself, What would you do? The clock was ticking. The baby was growing. And Ava Lewis was about to discover that some secrets are too big to keep hidden in a city that never stops watching. Ava Lewis disappeared for 3 months, and nobody noticed she was gone. Think about that for a second. In a city of 8 million people, in an industry built on visibility, in a relationship where control was currency, she vanished into plain sight. And the man who claimed to love her, the man who needed her at his side for every event and photo opportunity, didn't question it for a single moment. Because Julian Sterling was in Milan, drowning in meetings and runway shows, and the intoxicating drug of his own importance. And because Ava had become an expert at giving him exactly what he expected to hear. Complications, she'd told him over crackling international phone lines. The doctor says I need to rest. I'll join you after the 3-month mark. He'd accepted it without hesitation, relieved probably that the problem was handling itself quietly, conveniently, out of sight and out of mind. But Ava wasn't resting. She was preparing for war. Brooklyn, a tiny apartment she'd rented under a different name, paid for in cash from money she'd been quietly siphoning from her own accounts for months. Nothing Julian would notice. Nothing that would raise flags. Just careful, calculated survival. The apartment was nothing like the Midtown penthouse. No marble countertops, no Central Park views, no floor-to-ceiling windows that made you feel like you owned the sky. This was raw and real. Radiator that clanked at night. Neighbors you could hear through thin walls. The smell of someone else's cooking seeping through the floorboards. It was perfect, because here, in this anonymous corner of the city, Ava Lewis could become someone else. Someone who didn't have to pretend. Someone who could let her body do what bodies do, grow and change, and prepare for the miracle that was coming. The pregnancy progressed in secret. Her body transformed while her social media stayed frozen in carefully curated lies. Photos from months ago, strategically posted. Professional shots from events she'd attended before she started showing. The illusion of presence while she hid in Brooklyn, watching her reflection change in a cracked mirror that had probably been there since the 70s. And then, on a night when February snow fell soft and silent over the city, Ava's water broke. No Julian, no penthouse, no pristine private hospital with concierge service, and rooms that looked like hotel suites. Just Ava, gripping the counter in that tiny Brooklyn kitchen. Phone in shaking hands, calling the midwife who'd agreed to help her without asking too many questions. Some angels don't have wings. Some have medical bags and kind eyes and the wisdom to know when a woman needs silence more than judgment. The labor was long, painful in ways Ava hadn't imagined, even after reading every book and watching every video. But when that first cry split the air, sharp and angry and alive, something inside Ava shifted permanently, like tectonic plates moving, like the foundation of who she was cracking open to reveal someone entirely new underneath. A girl, 8 pounds, 2 ounces. Perfect. Ava held her daughter against her chest in that small Brooklyn bedroom and felt a calm she'd never experienced in Julian's penthouse with all its luxury and space. This was right. This was real. This tiny, squirming, beautiful creature was the most honest thing Ava had ever created. She named her Lila, and with that name, Ava made an unspoken promise. I will protect you from everything, even if it destroys me. But here's where the story gets really complicated. Because Ava couldn't just disappear into Brooklyn motherhood and leave her old life behind. She needed that life. Needed the money, the connections, the career she'd built. Needed to maintain the fiction that she was still the woman Julian expected her to be. So she did something that should have been impossible. She went back to work. Picture this. Ava, barely 3 weeks postpartum, binding her chest to hide the evidence of breastfeeding, wearing carefully structured clothes that concealed any remaining baby weight, walking into Sterling Atelier's offices like nothing had changed, smiling at colleagues, discussing fabric swatches, attending meetings while her breasts ached with milk and her heart ached for the daughter she'd left with Rachel, her fellow designer friend who'd agreed to help for reasons Ava still didn't fully understand. Money, sure. Ava paid Rachel quietly, generously, with designer sketches, an expensive gift that could never be traced back to childcare. But it was more than that. Rachel saw something in Ava's desperation, Maybe recognize the impossible position of a woman trying to be everything to everyone while being allowed to be herself to no one. The juggling act became Ava's new reality. Morning. Wake at 5 a.m. to feed Lila. Pump milk for the day. Shower away the evidence of motherhood. Commute. Subway to Manhattan. Transforming from mother to designer with every stop. Day. Meetings, fittings, creative sessions. All while our phone buzzed with updates from Rachel. Late nights. Racing back to Brooklyn. Sometimes arriving just as Lila woke crying, holding her daughter in the dark and humming fashion show soundtracks because they were the only lullabies she knew. Nobody noticed. That's the terrifying part. In an industry built on image and observation, where people scrutinized every detail of every outfit and every appearance, nobody saw what Ava was doing. They saw what she wanted them to see, the polished, focused, slightly thinner version of herself. If anything, people complimented her new discipline, her commitment, her work ethic. She was dying inside, and they thought she'd never looked better. But there were close calls, moments when the mask almost slipped, like the time Lila woke up screaming during a late-night design session at the office. Ava had brought her, hidden in a car seat, covered with blanket, sleeping peacefully until she wasn't. The sudden wail of a hungry infant echoing through empty design studios at 11 p.m. Ava's heart stopped. She grabbed Lila and ran to the corner office, the one that was always empty, locking the door and pressing her daughter against her chest, humming desperately until the crying stopped. The security guard had called up, asking if everything was okay. Just a video I was watching. Ava had lied, voice steady despite the terror flooding her system. Research for the spring collection. He'd bought it. They always bought it. Or the time a colleague came to visit unexpectedly, knocking on the door of Ava's official apartment. The one Julian knew about, the one that was supposed to be her temporary residence during his Milan trip. Ava had 30 seconds to hide every trace of Lila from the living room, stuffing bottles and onesies into cabinets while the knocking continued. She'd opened the door breathless, blamed it on a workout, accepted the casserole the colleague had brought with a smile that felt like her face might crack. How long can you live like this before you break? How many near misses before the inevitable disaster? Ava asked herself these questions every single day, but she didn't have the luxury of answers. She only had momentum. Keep moving. Keep lying. Keep the plate spinning. And then Julian came home. 3 months in Milan turned into 4, then 5, then 6. But eventually, business demanded his return. He called Ava with that familiar confidence in his voice, already planning their reunion, already positioning her back in his world like a chess piece he'd temporarily put aside. "I've missed you," he said, and maybe some part of him meant it. Ava felt ice water in her veins. Lila was 6 months old now, pulling herself up, making sound that were almost words, growing into a person with preferences and personality, and a smile that could light up Ava's darkest moments. And now Julian was coming back, expecting to slot Ava back into his life like she'd been in suspended animation waiting for him. The apartment in Brooklyn became her most carefully guarded secret. She moved Lila upstate to her mother's house, a small place near the Hudson River where Ava had spent summers as a child. Her mother asked questions, but not too many. Mothers have a way of knowing when to push and when to simply help. She took Lila with the kind of unspoken agreement that meant everything. "I don't approve, but I've got your back." Ava returned to Manhattan transformed. Thinner than before, yes, but also harder, sharper, like she'd been forged in fire and come out as steel. When Julian swept her into his arms at JFK Airport, cameras flashing because someone had tipped off the paparazzi, Ava played her part perfectly. The devoted fiancée, the woman who'd waited patiently, the future Mrs. Sterling. She felt nothing but the weight of her own deception. Julian noticed the changes but misread them completely. Her new intensity, her laser focus at work. He thought it was maturity, growth. He praised her for becoming more professional, for taking things seriously. He had no idea she'd been running a covert operation right under his nose. No idea that every smile cost her something. No idea that the woman in his arms was a stranger wearing Ava's face. And then came the wedding planning. Oh, God, the wedding planning. because Julian hadn't forgotten about making their relationship official. If anything, his time away had convinced him they needed to cement their status. The spring wedding became his obsession. Grand ballroom booked. Guest list that read like a who's who of fashion and finance. Couture dress fittings where Ava stood on pedestals while strangers pinned fabric to her body and discussed her like she wasn't even there. The invitations went out. 400 guests. Coverage in Vogue and Harper's Bazaar. A wedding that would be the event of the season. Ava smiled through all of it while her daughter grew up 2 hours away. Lila was walking now, almost 2 years old. Those critical years when children change daily, learn constantly, bond irreversibly with whoever's there to guide them. And Ava was missing it. She'd sneak away on weekends, drive upstate in a rental car Julian didn't know about, spend frantic hours with her daughter before racing back to Manhattan for whatever event or fitting or obligation demanded her presence. The separation was killing her, slowly, quietly, like bleeding out from an internal wound nobody could see. She'd hold Lila in her mother's small kitchen, breathing in that specific baby smell that was already fading into little girl scent, and wonder what she was doing. Wonder if any of this was worth it. Wonder if she should just confess everything, burn it all down, and face whatever consequences came. But then she'd remember Julian's face when she told him about the pregnancy. That cold calculation, that immediate rejection. And she'd know that confession was an option, because Julian Sterling didn't deserve to know Lila, didn't deserve to make decisions about her life. He'd made his choice when he demanded Ava end the pregnancy. So Ava made hers. She'd keep the secret, play the role, get through the wedding. And then what? What was the end game here? Did she think she could marry Julian and keep Lila hidden forever? Did she imagine some future where she maintained this double life permanently, shuttling between wife and mother, never fully present for either? The questions haunted her during 3 a.m. feedings when she managed to be upstate, tortured her during champagne toasts when someone made a joke about her and Julian having babies soon, and she had to laugh like it was a distant dream instead of her daily reality. The stress was unsustainable. Ava knew it. Her mother knew it. Even Rachel, still babysitting when Ava needed her, knew it. They'd have conversations in hushed tones. You can't keep doing this. Something's got to give. What happens when he finds out? But Ava was too far in to turn back. The lies had compounded, built on each other like a house of cards that got taller and more precarious with every passing day. One truth would topple everything. Meanwhile, Ava's professional life reached new heights. Her designs for Sterling Atelier's couture line were getting serious critical attention. Fashion editors who'd ignored her before were now requesting interviews. Julian proudly credited her creative vision in speeches, finally acknowledging her contribution, though always in a way that centered himself, of course. "I'm lucky to have such a talented partner," he'd say, smiling for cameras, and everyone would coo about what a power couple they made. If only they knew. If only they could see Ava sneaking out of galas at 10 p.m., claiming headaches and exhaustion, driving 2 hours to read bedtime stories to a daughter who was starting to ask why Mommy didn't live with them, starting to wonder, in that way toddlers do, why everything was so complicated. "When are you coming home?" Lila would ask, and Ava would feel her heart crack a little more each time. "Soon, baby, soon." But soon never came, because now the wedding was 3 months away, then 2 months, then 6 weeks. The invitations had gone out. The deposits were paid. The dress hung in Ava's closet, like a beautiful white noose. And Lila, sweet Lila, was asking why she couldn't come to the pretty party everyone kept talking about. "You'll be there," Ava promised, though she had no idea how to make that true. "I promise you'll be there." It was a promise she should never have made, because on a morning in early spring, exactly 2 weeks before the wedding, Rachel called with a problem. She was sick, really sick, couldn't watch Lila for the upcoming week of wedding preparations. And Ava's mother had a medical appointment she'd been trying to schedule for months. Not serious, but not something she could miss. "I'm sorry," Rachel said, voice rough with fever. "I tried to push through, but—" "No, it's okay," Ava interrupted, mind already racing through impossible logistics. I'll figure out. But there was nothing to figure out. No backup plan. No safety net. The week before the wedding was packed with events Julian expected her at. Rehearsal dinner planning. Final dress fitting. Press interviews. Photo shoots for the wedding coverage. For the first time since this whole deception began, Ava had run out of options. She sat in her Manhattan apartment, the official one, the one Julian knew about, and stared at her phone, at photos of Lila, at the calendar that showed her wedding date circled in red, at the impossible choice staring her in the face. Tell Julian the truth, or miss the most important week of her daughter's life so far. Confess everything and watch her carefully constructed world explode, or keep lying and sacrifice another piece of her soul. But maybe there was a third option. Maybe, just maybe, she could bring Lila to the city, keep her hidden in the Brooklyn apartment, sneak away between wedding preparations, make it work for just one more week. It was insane, reckless, the kind of decision that only makes sense when you're desperate and running on fumes, and so far past your breaking point that you can't even see it in the rearview mirror anymore. Ava made the call, made the arrangements, brought her daughter to Brooklyn, and that's when everything started to unravel. Because secrets that big, in a city that never sleeps, with a wedding that had 400 guests and press coverage and eyes everywhere, those secrets don't keep. They detonate. The question isn't if it all falls apart. The question is how spectacular the explosion will be when it finally does, and whether Ava Lewis will survive the blast, or if the truth she's been hiding will destroy everything she's built, including herself. The wedding is in 13 days. Lila is in Brooklyn. Julian suspects nothing, and the clock is ticking louder than ever. What does freedom cost when you built your entire life on a lie? The morning of the wedding arrived like every other Manhattan spring day, beautiful, indifferent, utterly unaware of the chaos about to unfold. The grand ballroom was a masterpiece of excess. Fresh flowers flown in from Ecuador. Crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than most people's homes. Tables set with china so delicate you could see light through it. 400 guests in their designer best. Sipping champagne that cost more per bottle than Ava used to make in a week. This was it. The moment Julian had orchestrated. The event that would cement their status as fashion royalty, the perfect ending to their perfect love story. Except nothing about the story was perfect. And endings, Ava was about to learn, rarely go according to plan. She stood in the bridal suite, staring at her reflection in a floor-length mirror. The dress she designed herself was stunning. White silk that caught the light, lace details that took hundreds of hours to complete, a train that pulled behind her like liquid moonlight. She looked like every bride's dream. Like a magazine cover, like someone who had everything. She felt like she was drowning, because 13 days had turned into hours, and in those hours, something had shifted in the universe. Some cosmic alignment of terrible timing and worse luck. Rachel, still recovering but insistent on helping, had brought Lila to the venue, just for a moment, she'd said, just to show Rachel the beautiful space before the ceremony. What harm could it do? Rachel meant well. Rachel always meant well. But Rachel didn't understand the careful architecture of lies that kept Ava's world standing. Didn't understand that one crack could bring down the entire structure. And there, in the back row of the ballroom, holding a rose in her tiny hand, was Lila, 2 years old, wearing a white dress that matched Ava's, hair in soft curls. Looking around with those wide eyes that saw everything and understood just enough to be dangerous. Ava's heart stopped when she saw her. Literally stopped. That moment of pure cardiac arrest before it kicks back into overdrive. She was supposed to be walking down the aisle. The music was starting. Guests were turning in their seats. Julian stood at the altar in his custom tuxedo, that confident smile on his face like he'd already won. And then someone gasped. Not a quiet gasp. The kind of gasp that cuts through music and murmur conversation like a knife through silk. A woman in the third row, Melissa Chun, fashion editor for Vogue, sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued, had seen Lila, had seen the resemblance, had done the math that everyone else was about to do. The whispers started like wildfire. That viral kind of gossip that moves through a crowd faster than sound. Look at that child. Look at her face. Oh my God, could that be? No, it couldn't, but the resemblance. Lila, oblivious of the chaos she'd caused, toddled forward, heading straight for Ava with that determined walk toddlers have when they see their mother, arms outstretched, rose clutched in one hand. The most innocent bomb that ever detonated in Manhattan society. Mama, her voice carried in the sudden silence, clear as a bell, undeniable as gravity. The music stopped, like someone had cut the power. For 100 people held their breath simultaneously, and the sound of that collective silence was louder than any scream. Julian's smile didn't just fade. It shattered. Ava watched it happen in slow motion. The confusion, the recognition, the horror, the rage, all cycling through his face in the space of 3 heartbeats. Color drained from his skin like someone had opened a valve. His hands, which had been clasped calmly in front of him, began to shake. And Ava stood there, frozen at the entrance to her own wedding, watching her entire life implode in real time. You know that moment in movies where time slows down? Where the protagonist sees everything with crystal clarity. This was nothing like that. This was chaos. Pure, unfiltered chaos. Cameras clicking because, of course, there were cameras. This was a fashion event of season. Guests standing up for a better view. Julian's mother clutching her pearls like they could save her from the scandal. The priest looking confused, checking his notes like maybe he'd missed something in the ceremony script. And in the middle of it all, Lila reached Ava and grabbed her dress with sticky toddler hands, leaving a smudge on that perfect white silk that had taken months to create. "Mama, pretty," she said, because that's all that mattered to her. The pretty dress, the flowers, the sparkly room, not the 400 witnesses, not the man at the altar whose world was ending, not the cameras capturing every second of the most spectacular wedding disaster in Manhattan history. Julian found his voice. It came out strangled, barely recognizable. "What is this?" 3 words. That's all it took. 3 words that demanded an answer Ava couldn't give without destroying everything. But what was left to destroy? The secret was out. The lie was exposed. The carefully constructed fiction of her life had just collapsed like a building with no foundation. So Ava did something she hadn't done in 2 years. She told the truth. "She's my daughter." Her voice was steady, stronger than she expected, louder than necessary in that silent ballroom. "We named her Lila." The gasps multiplied. People were on their phones now, texting, tweeting, live streaming probably. This would be everywhere within minutes. The CEO's fiancée with a secret daughter. The hidden child at the altar. The scandal that would define a generation of fashion gossip. But Ava didn't care anymore. Because looking down at Lila, at her daughter's confused face starting to crumple because the grown-ups were acting weird and scared, Ava felt something she hadn't felt in years, relief. The weight of the secret had been crushing her. Day by day, hour by hour, lie by lie. And now it was gone. The truth was out there, messy and complicated, and absolutely devastating. But out there, no more hiding. No more pretending. No more being split in half. Julian's face cycled through emotions too fast to track. Ava watched him process it. The pregnancy he demanded she terminate. The child that existed anyway. The years of deception. She could see him doing the math. Could see the moment he realized she'd been lying to him for 2 solid years. That everything he thought he knew about their relationship was fiction. His jaw clenched. Muscles in his neck went taut. And when he spoke again, his voice carried something Ava had never heard before. Complete, utter defeat. "I cannot do this." For words this time. For words that ended what 3 words had begun. He tore off his cufflinks. Custom, probably cost a fortune, and threw them on the altar floor. The sound of metal hitting marble echoed through the ballroom. Then he turned and walked. Not ran. Walked. With as much dignity as a man can have when his wedding is imploding on live television and social media. The door slammed behind him. The sound reverberated, and Ava was left standing there in her wedding dress, holding her daughter, facing 400 shocked faces and more cameras than she could count. She should have been devastated. should have been crying, should have collapsed under the weight of public humiliation. Instead, she felt light. The priest cleared his throat. Someone's phone rang, shrill and inappropriate. A guest in the back started laughing, that nervous kind of laughter that happens when people don't know how else to process absolute chaos. And Ava Lewis, for the first time in years, smiled a real smile. She scooped Lila into her arms fully now, not caring about the dress, and turned to face the cameras, face the gossip, face the consequences of her truth. "I think that's enough excitement for today," she said, and her voice carried a strength she didn't know she possessed. Then she walked, not down the aisle toward where Julian had been, but toward the exit, toward whatever came next. The aftermath was predictable and brutal. By evening, the story was everywhere. Every gossip blog, every fashion website. Social media was on fire with opinions, some sympathetic, most judgmental, all absolutely certain they knew the full story despite knowing nothing at all. Ava retreated to her mother's Brooklyn brownstone with Lila. The press camped outside for 3 days. She didn't talk to them, didn't issue statements, didn't try to control the narrative. She just existed in the quiet of her mother's kitchen, drinking tea and watching Lila play with blocks, and trying to figure out who she was when she wasn't performing for Julian's world. The call started on day 4. Her phone, which she'd silenced, showed hundreds of missed messages. Most were from journalists. Some were from concerned friends. A few were from colleagues at Sterling Atelier. Awkward messages that danced around asking if she was okay while really asking if this was in effect a company. But one message stood out. From Telsha, a designer Ava had worked with years ago. They'd stayed in touch, in that casual way industry people do. Telsha had recently opened a boutique in Manhattan while juggling her own newborn. The message was simple. Office space available if you need it. No judgment, just support. Ava stared at that message for a long time. Then she called Telsha back. Within 2 weeks, something unexpected happened. The narrative started shifting. Articles began appearing, not in gossip columns, but in places that mattered. Think pieces about working mothers. Features on women in fashion who'd built empires while raising children. Profiles of entrepreneurs who'd chosen authenticity over convenience. And slowly, grudgingly, public opinion turned. Not completely, never completely, but enough. Enough that when Ava gave her first interview to a morning show, comments flooded in with support. Women sharing their own stories of impossible choices. Mothers who understood the weight of secrets. People who saw past the scandal to the human story underneath. "I will never apologize for loving my child," Ava told the interviewer, Lila sleeping in her arms. The clip went viral. Genuinely viral. Millions of views. Think pieces about it. Professors using it in classes about gender and work-life balance. But Ava didn't care about going viral. She cared about building something real. Billonaire Designs launched 3 months after the wedding that wasn't. A small couture atelier focused on empowering women through fashion. Designs that made women feel strong. Dresses that celebrated bodies of all types. A business model built on transparency and authenticity. Everything Ava's relationship with Julian had lacked. The orders came in slowly at first, then faster. Clients who admired the story. Women who wanted to support a single mother refusing to back down. People who believed in second chances and new beginnings. Ava worked from Telsha's shared office space, Lila in a playpen nearby. Sometimes clients would arrive for fittings and find Ava bouncing a toddler on her hip while pinning fabric. She didn't apologize for it, didn't hide it. This was her life now, messy and real and completely on her terms. The adjustment wasn't easy. Money was tight. Sleep was scarce. There were days when Ava questioned everything, when the weight of single motherhood and entrepreneurship felt like too much. But then she'd remember Julian's face when he demanded she end the pregnancy. Remember the years of making herself smaller. Remember the suffocating weight of living a lie. And she'd keep going. By the time the next New York Fashion Week rolled around, Billonaire Designs had built enough of a following to earn an invitation to showcase. Not a prime slot, not the main stage, but a slot, a chance. Ava poured everything into that collection. Dresses that glittered like starlight, inspired by late nights in Brooklyn with Lila, by the city lights visible from their small apartment, by the resilience it took to rebuild a life from ruins. Each piece told a story. Each design was a declaration. I survived. I chose myself. I'm still here. The show was scheduled for 4 p.m. on a Thursday. Ava arrived early, Lila in tow, because childcare had fallen through and Ava had learned to roll with these punches. She dressed her daughter in a miniature version of one of the designs, a small gesture that would either read as charming or desperate, depending on the critic's mood. Backstage was controlled chaos. Models getting ready. Hair and makeup teams working magic. The familiar energy of Fashion Week that Ava had missed more than she realized. And then, 10 minutes before showtime, she saw him, Julian Sterling, standing in the back of the venue. Not front row where he could have demanded a seat based on name alone, but back, quiet, almost hidden. Their eyes met across the chaos. Ava's first instinct was anger. How dare he show up here? How dare he witness this moment she'd built without him? But then she saw his face, really saw it, and realized the anger she expected wasn't there. Just regret. Deep, genuine regret. He nodded once, a small acknowledgement, then took his seat. The show began. Models walked in Ava's designs, and the audience response was immediate. Applause that wasn't just polite. Real appreciation. Buyers taking notes. Press photographers capturing every angle. And when Ava took her final bow, Lila in her arms, because why hide anymore, the applause grew louder. Standing ovation from the back rows. Tears in Telsha's eyes. Her mother in the audience, crying with pride. From his seat in the back, Julian applauded too. It didn't fix anything. Didn't erase the years of control or the demand that had started this whole spiral. But it was something. An acknowledgement that Ava had done what he couldn't. She'd chosen love over image. Authenticity over convenience. The hard right over the easy wrong. After the show, Ava didn't seek him out. Didn't need his validation or approval. She was surrounded by people who mattered. Friends, clients, supporters who'd rallied around her rebuilding. Lila babbled happily in her arms, playing with the edge of Ava's jacket. This was her life now. Imperfect, complicated, exhausting, real, and she wouldn't trade it for anything. Because here's what Ava learned in the ruins of her old life. You can't build a future on someone else's terms. You can't love authentically while hiding your truth. And sometimes the ending you didn't choose becomes the beginning you needed all along. Manhattan still pulsed with ambition and dreams. The fashion industry still chewed up the weak and celebrated the strong. But Ava Lewis had learned to define strength differently. Not as perfection, not as control, but as the courage to choose yourself when the world demands you choose anything else. The story doesn't end with a perfect bow. There's no reconciliation scene where Julian begs for forgiveness, and Ava considers taking him back. Life isn't a rom-com. Some relationships end because they were never built on solid ground to begin with, but it does end with Ava thriving. Building a business that matters. Raising a daughter who'll grow up knowing her mother chose her every single day. Creating a community of women who support each other through the impossible juggle of ambition and authenticity. And on quiet mornings in Brooklyn, when Lila climbs into bed and asks to hear the story of the pretty dress and the big party, Ava tells her a version of the truth. Not the whole truth. Lila's too young for that. But enough. Mama had to make a choice, she says, stroking her daughter's hair, between what other people wanted and what was right. And I chose you. I'll always choose you. It's enough. For now, it's enough. So here's my question for you. If you were Ava, standing at that altar with your secret exposed and your world falling apart, would you have had the courage to walk away? Would you have chosen the unknown future over the comfortable lie? And when have you had to make that choice in your own life? The moment when staying safe meant betraying yourself. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me about a time you chose the hard right over the easy wrong. Share this with someone who needs to hear that starting over isn't failure. It's freedom. And if Ava's story resonated with you, if you want more real, raw, unfiltered stories about people choosing themselves against impossible odds, hit that subscribe button. Because every week, we're diving into stories that matter. Stories about courage that doesn't look like courage until you're living through it. Stories about people who rebuilt their lives from ashes and came out stronger. Your story might be next. Share in the comments. Let's build a community of people who refuse to live small. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.